DuckTV Esports is proud to present a brand new podcast covering the Overwatch League and all things Overwatch. Now, debuting with episode 1 of the Go Goats podcast, here's your host, Nathan Torres.
Yeah, welcome everyone to the first episode of Go Goats, where in 2020 we still have 3-3 and roll lock is not a thing to us. I am Nathan Torres, Narwhal. I'm a major cinema studies and journalism here at the University of Oregon. As with me,
I'm Logan Hirsch. I am a Super J major. My battle tag is Lancelot, and I'm here and excited to play some goats. Let's go, Reinhardt.
Hi, my name is Eric Campuzano. I am a double major, majoring in journalism and Japanese, and my battle tag is Yabunai.
Perfect. Yeah, so we are an Overwatch podcast here, specifically the Overwatch League. As we do start this week, we do have some interesting news, at least coming out of the Overwatch League and just Overwatch in general, with the introduction of hero pools. Specifically in the Overwatch League, we will have a lock for heroes. Every 2 weeks, there will be change. Do you guys have any thoughts, really, just generalized about that to start off?
I think it's going to be interesting because I feel one of the large complaints about last year's season is that we didn't really see much variety in, especially in the first half of the season. It's stage 1, stage 2 was almost completely goats. Stage 3 was a lot of goats as well. And then we got stage 4 Rollock, and that's when we got first the pulled pork meta and then Orisa Sigma double shield, which is, I think, just now being eradicated today. I think you still see it in some level, but it's not quite as common as it used to be. So I think it'd be a very interesting change to see to maybe diversify the meta a little bit.
Yeah, and that's sort of how I feel. With the beginning of the Overwatch, we had sort of that 3 tank and 3 healer meta. And it just feels like that Blizzard really is trying to figure out how to make more heroes viable. And this just seems sort of like a nuclear option of essentially forcing people to diverse their lineups. And it's going to be interesting to see how teams deal with this. For example, we had the Shock last year. They were able to get through each and every single meta with the 3 tank, 3 healer meta. And then once the rollout came with 2 supports, 2 damage, and 2 tanks being forced onto each team, they were still able to come over that. So it's going to be interesting to see how teams deal with this rollout with 1 healer, 2 damage heroes, and 1 support being banned each week.
Yeah, it could lead to a lot of different stuff going on. 1 week we could see Wrecking Ball being the main tank because you don't have an Orisa in the field. Other times you could see these weird combinations, maybe Sigma's the one ban, but double shield's still strong, so you see Reinhardt, Orisa, so on and so forth. And that's just one example across a small tier of what we could potentially be seeing.
Yeah, I think just not even just in the Overwatch League, kind of just the mentality and the kind of behind the scenes of the Overwatch League would be kind of interesting. Definitely with coaches, it kind of always felt like, oh, the coaches was a thing, but everyone already knew yeah, just go goats, just do this, and you win with just team skill. And now it feels like the coaches might be able to do more, even though they don't get told for less a week in advance. So I'm really intrigued by how the coaches will be affected by this, just in general. Do you think they'll do more? Or do you think they'll do even less than they kind of seem like they already were doing?
See, I'm thinking that coaching is going to get a lot more in-depth stuff. You aren't going to be able to just practice the same comp week after week, month after month, and hone that to perfection. It's really going to benefit the teams and the coaches that are able to bring a lot of flexibility into the lineup, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think that we're going to start seeing coaches play more of a role in the Overwatch League. So basically, whoever can train their players to adapt better to each week, adaptation is going to be really key to this new sort of banning of heroes every week. And the teams that can best adapt are going to be the ones that are going to be rewarded the most. If you're going to have a player who only main tanks Orisa or only main tanks Sigma in this 2 shield meta, we're going to start seeing them get punished. So it's going to be interesting to see which players can come out to the top and adapt the best.
Yeah, it's definitely going to reward like those players that like have a lot of different heroes like in their pool, like, and then the ones that are like they specialize more in one hero. It's like when you get like that point in the hero ban meta where it's like it's going to specialize like that hero, like their hero is going to be really strong, then that's really good. But then at the same time, it's like, what if that hero's banned, or what if like a lot of like the what's the word, the supporting heroes to that like one particular hero like gets banned, then it's like, then what are you gonna do? You're gonna have to bring in someone else, or hope that, or like have that person like flex onto perhaps maybe not quite as good of a role as well. So we're definitely gonna see a lot of interesting selections over the next few weeks.
Yeah, I'd say just with the Overwatch League, it's going to be very interesting. Definitely with the one tank, one support, and two DPS being gone. Um, I think I'd finally liked that from King Jeff, Lord Jeff himself. He finally told us what their balancing changes were, like what their mentality is going into balancing. It always seemed like they just were doing it just cause and seeing this experimenting. I like how he finally said it's more to change the meta, where they're doing hero pools to fix the meta itself, and yeah, just fix the meta, because every time we're stale stage after stage, and it takes a huge change to finally fix a meta that we don't really like. I mean, half of Overwatch just, I mean, we love GOAT tier, of course, but it was a stale meta to watch for sure.
Yeah, and I feel like the biggest complaint, it's like, it's not that GOATS itself was a bad meta. I personally really enjoyed it, and it's like, you probably won't see as many people doing that with Dive. I think the main complaint with the meta is how stale they've gotten, because like, yeah, no matter how good a meta is, if that's all you're playing for 6 months out of a year, then it's going to get like really stale like by the end of it. And it's going to be even more stale to the viewers who like want to see something different. So I think in terms of that regard, the hero pools are going to be a much needed improvement in that regard.
Well, I think a big factor that's going to play with this is the fact that playmaking is going to be possible again. So let's say Sigma is banned, right? So Reaper is going to really benefit from that, because he's not going to be able to be stunned by the Sigma. And I know Reaper's really big right now, but without that rock being able to stun Reaper in the middle of his ultimate, that's going to change things. So with this ban, we're going to start seeing, I think, more Genjis being thrown out there with this sword. We're going to start to see more Widowmakers pop out as shields start to come down. So we're going to start being able to see more playmaking, which brings excitement to the Overwatch League, which is what we love. We love, sort of those insane plays coming out from like the top tier damage players in the game, like the triple headshots and stuff like that. So I think that with this sort of system, we're going to start being able to see that again. Because as much as we love GOATs here, it was kind of the same thing over and over again. It was sort of this Mexican standoff with the ultimate economy, saying, okay, now we have Reinhardt and with Earthshatter up, we have Zarya with her Graviton Surge ready. So basically it became a standoff to see, okay, who releases their ultimates first, and then when whoever releases the ultimates first, everybody just kind of throws it all together. And that sort of happened for a long period of time, so it just kind of became stale after that. So now with this sort of tier lock and the bans, we're going to start seeing DPSs thrive and start to see the playmaking happen again.
Yeah, I'd say, like what you're saying, with like, do you think it will just be continuous week after weeks, where say we see a Sigma ban first week, next week we get an Orisa ban, and then more people would start playing Sigma? You think it will just keep going back and forth between certain heroes, especially within the tank and support, because it's such a small hero pool, that I think those are going to be very repetitive, at least with the bans. At least with damage, I mean, banning 2, it's such a big hero pool that I feel like it won't be as repetitive, but there's still a possibility for that, for sure.
See, I think based on like what we've been hearing from the developer updates, it's like, yeah, we'll probably see a bit of that like at the beginning of each stage or something, where it's like we see Sigma banned, then Orisa banned, and then we have to ban Sigma again, because these aren't just random bannings. From what I've gathered, these are like, they're banning heroes that have seen like a lot of play the previous like couple of weeks or so on and so forth. But from what I've gathered from that is that that gives the devs an opportunity to like work those heroes, maybe nerf like the ones that are seeing a lot of play, buff the ones that aren't seeing as much play, basically make things like as even level as possible till we're seeing every tank on the lineup get at least some play but not too much play. Same with the supports as well. And so yeah, I think that is something we'll see a lot at the beginning of the Overwatch League, but once like people get used to the new system and like the dev updates get refined a bit, then that'll probably decrease in a quantity as we go on.
I think the main theory that they're going to go with is, let's say that Orisa gets banned, and then the 2 tanks for the week that are popular within the Overwatch League are Reinhardt and Sigma. Well, let's say that Reinhardt is the favorite one. So instead of alternating between Sigma and Orisa, they're going to choose Reinhardt to ban. And then we have Orisa and Sigma. And then that gives way to, say, more different bannings. So although the tank pool is really small, I think that's going to leave a little bit of opening for new tanks to thrive. I would personally really like to see D.Va come back. I really love her ultimate, just that self-destruct and everybody trying to scramble away from the ticking time bomb. So I think with this sort of new system, we're starting to see more alternating tanks. Although I do think it's going to get a little bit repetitive, as you said, towards the beginning, I think that we will start to see more alternating tanks. The biggest one that I think is going to be interesting is going to see the DPS rotation. Because right now it's Reaper and Doomfist. Doomfist can get in there, wreak damage, and get a bunch of shields up, while Reaper can just tear through shields like it's nothing. So I'm curious to see how that DPS rotation is going to go.
Yeah, with the absence, it's like, let's just go on a limb here and say that for the first week of Overwatch League, I don't think it's been explicitly confirmed one way or the other yet. Correct me if I'm wrong. We don't know what heroes are being banned yet. So let's just go out on a limb, say Reaper and Doomfist are the ones that are like banned for the first 2 weeks. It's like that leaves open like a lot of potential. Yeah, we'll probably see a lot of Mei, because Mei is like the third hero that's like kind of overtuned right now. That's pretty powerful in her own right. But then it's like, who do you fit into that 4 slot? Used to be Hanzo. Hanzo got nerfed pretty hard recently, so it's like could see a whole lot of different strats like come in, and like we'll have the meta, as I will, for like the first week, but like I feel it'd also be a lot of scrambling to see like what other heroes like fit into that niche as well.
I think one thing to consider here too is that Jeff Kaplan did say that he is open to making changes to this system. Mm-hmm. So I think that even throughout the Overwatch League, this may change, and I to be honest, I think it will change halfway through the season, because the role lock, the 2-2-2, that changed in the middle of the season. Mm-hmm. So I think that this system will change, in my personal opinion. I think that the idea of banning heroes won't necessarily go away, but I think this system will change eventually, in my personal opinion.
Yeah, perfect. So, yeah, so they did tell us that they won't start doing hero pools, at least in the Overwatch League, for about another month.
Oh, okay. So we're starting off from ground zero.
Yeah, it's basically middle of season. I mean, kind of. I mean, we're about to start literally this weekend, and about a month in, we'll get hero pools. So, okay. By that time, we'll have a distinct, like, how it's going to work more properly within the league and everything. I find it interesting that they're not going to do it for playoffs and tournaments at all. It's kind of switching up the whole end game of like the tournaments. Why take it out for the biggest part of your league when you can't just, I don't know, for me it feels like why take it out for the grand finals, the mid-season tournament, there's all of the playoffs in general. I get it's like to show off all the heroes for, I guess, because everyone, you know, they do it on ESPN, like grand finals and stuff like that. But I kind of like it going into that as well, because at that point, if something is like a meta, like say Goats is good, but they ban Reinhardt that week or whatever, something like that, it will really affect the grand finals and make it way more interesting than it just being kind of stale within, and we just get a bunch of 4-0s, let's say, or something like that. Make it way more interesting for the teams within the league.
See, my counterpoint to that is that, yes, it's like I feel like half the reason that they're eliminating with the hero pools for like the playoffs and stuff is so that you can see like every like player on their best hero and you don't have to worry about that hero getting banned. I also think that the other reason they're doing that is you don't want to like intentionally screw over a team by banning like say their best heroes like going into the playoffs. Like let's say you've got a team that gets really good with the double shield and that's where they get the majority of their wins and they get enough wins to get into the playoffs, and then suddenly when you get to the playoffs it's like you see like Orisa being banned for like a large portion of the playoffs and the team ends up getting eliminated because of that. I feel like not having hero pools in the finals like prevents scenarios like that where it's like teams winning or losing is based on their own skill and what the current state of the game is instead of like what heroes were choosing to be removed like in the process.
Yeah, but that sort of brings up the problem again, where you're saying, what if someone is like good on a specific hero, but that's still applicable to the rest of the season? Because let's say for example the Dallas Field has an amazing Sigma player, but because he is one of the top tanks right now, he's not able to play that. So then you get to the playoffs, you start to reflect, well, the reason I'm placed here in the playoffs is because I wasn't able to play Sigma because he was currently banned for, all those times during the regular season. So that sort of brings up that contradiction where you're like, well, we want everybody to have the heroes, but at the same time, we want everybody to sort of expand out. But if you're opening the hero pool for, the grand finals, you're changing the rules of the whole season. And what I think is really important in any sport is consistency. Consistency is key. And even other esports titles, that's the main thing. You need consistency, not only for the players, but also for the audience. Because let's say, for example, you have a new viewer come in to, say, the grand finals, and they see everybody is open to play. Well, when they come back to the regular season, they see, wait a second. Why isn't Sigma able to be playable? Well, that kind of brings into like this weird mode where it's like, well, what if I was able to play Sigma during those times? So I think it is a weird challenge that the Overwatch League will have to deal with. But again, I think that there's going to be some tweaking as the season goes on and we see this system play out.
Yeah, that's a very valid point that I honestly hadn't considered, and I agree with what you said in that either we're going to stick with this the entire time and then it's like if it ends up working then great, but I also think that with that in mind I think it is likely that we'll get at least some tweaking, like it probably, if not before, then definitely after the mid-season tournament, because that's going to be like the first like real like event in this next season where it's like it's going to be the testing ground for like, okay, we've had the hero pools for a stage or so, and then now we're taking that away again to see what everyone plays like without that. How will that suddenly affect that since we've had an entire stage without hero pools now?
Yeah. Last thing, developer update. We are all very happy that Lord Jeff did bless us all with Play of the Game exports that will be coming out this year. Let's all give a round of applause for that, guys. Let's all give a round of applause. We've been waiting for that for very long. Lord Jeff did give that to us, and we are very excited. And with the end of that, we are going to go into rankings with Josh right after this. All right, and we're back. We are here with now Josh here.
What's up?
And do you have any quick thoughts just on hero pools? Very quick, I guess.
Yeah, I keep going back and forth. Like, it's this weird thing in my mind where, like, one moment I'm like, this is a great idea. I love it. As a player, I'm excited for it. But then I get into, like, the thoughts of, like, yeah, but the league and the travel, it's going to be tough, and the players aren't going to not like it, and first-time viewers, which I think was brought up. Like, viewers, I've been noticing a lot of ads on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Maybe it's just because I already follow a lot of the teams and leagues, but, like, if it's a first-time viewer, it might be a little confusing, and especially now that they're moving to the home stands, like, this is a time where they can really get a new audience for each of these teams, because it's not selling the whole league, you're selling your individual team. So it might be a bit confusing, but ultimately I kind of think it's going to be a good thing for the league, and I really like that they're not doing it in the finals and playoffs. I think that's the right call.
All right, yeah, I can see that, yeah. All right, perfect. So, yeah, we're going to do our power rankings now for the Overwatch League, which is the big thing that we're going to do here. We're all going to start. We can just do 20 down to 1, I guess we can just start here with Josh, and we'll go across here. Just if you have any quick thoughts or just anything, I guess you could just say about why you picked that there.
Yeah. So I guess my number 20 is going to be actually surprisingly one of the teams with. I'm not sure if you guys saw the new jerseys this year. I think they have one of the best looking kits. Like, it's the Boston Uprising. They're going to be taking this Moneyball approach, where they're just trying to get the best players they can for cheap, and I don't know if it's going to work out. They made it work the first year somehow, but at the same time, and I do think they have great players. I think Fusions is a really good main tank. And there are some players on that team that are going to be good if the meta allows them to play those heroes. I think they could be decent at some point. They have a lot of great contenders names, but ultimately I think they're really going to struggle, especially I think they're going to end up playing some really solid teams like NYXL and the Atlanta Reign. They're going to be ending to play those teams a lot because they're in the same conference.
Yeah, all right. I'll do mine. I have actually Washington Justice for my 20th pick, actually. I do think they do have fine supports with Aim God and Art, but, man, I don't think Corey is... I don't think he can carry this team.
Interesting.
I do think he's a good DPS, but I don't think he can carry this team enough. Their tanks and everything, I really don't think this team... I don't think... They might not be the worst team. I don't think they won't move up. I think they'll be definitely bottom 5 team for sure, I think, towards the end.
I'm with Josh. I have Boston also as my bottom team. They're one of the teams that cut almost all of their pieces from last year, which arguably was a good decision because they didn't really have a lot of success last year, and they kept, in my opinion, 2 of their best ones in Color Hex and Fusions. I'm not entirely sold on the Moneyball approach. Like, the new signings aren't really giving me much excitement. Like, if I had to pick 2 that I think would be good, it's the 2 that came from their academy, Muffin and Swimmer, but they also don't have a lot of depth, like, especially in this, like, new season where it's like you're going to be doing a lot of traveling. You're going to have to worry about hero bans. A lack of depth is going to really, like, hurt you, like, as the thing goes on. And combining that with, like, the unproven talents, like, I don't think Fusions on his own is going to be able to carry this team, and that's why I put them on bottom.
I am also with the host on this one. I also put Washington Justice for number 20. This kind of comes off of the fact that they were this year's Shanghai Dragons, unable to take a win. At least they got a few wins towards the end, but they weren't able to essentially get an identity together. It kind of felt like they were clashing, and they really couldn't get an identity together. The biggest thing that you saw struggle was definitely their tank line. Mm-hmm. So maybe this year they figured some stuff out with the less reliance on tanks this year. Maybe they can sort of step things up. If they can vary things up, I think they have a chance, but I definitely think they're going to be one of the lowest this year.
Perfect. And we'll go back over to you, Josh. We got 19 now.
Yeah, 19, which I guess in my mind now has been kind of where I put them. This is before I started hearing some things. My 19 is the LA Valiant. They did no big moves this offseason other than dumping all of their big name players and Custa retiring. And also they changed their colors and look really bad in my opinion. I'm from LA, and I get what they're trying to do. They're trying to be the Dodgers, they're trying to be UCLA, they're trying to be the Chargers. It's not really working in my opinion. But from what we've been hearing a lot from some pros over the last few days is that they're kind of scrim gods.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much their scrim bucks are going to be worth. They're in a division that's going to be tough, and I think they're going to be doing a lot of travel. I think McGravy has the opportunity to really pop off, but at the same time, I still don't know if I could really trust this team. I think they're going to not be a great team.
Yeah, I think, of course I have them a little bit later on my list, but I think those few things, I think it was Baby Bay that said something like on Twitter, and I think even KSF even himself put like that they're scrim gods. They're actually pretty good, so I was like, maybe I'll put them a little up. I was gonna have them at 19, but I think after a little of the saying online that they could be pretty good, I was a little intrigued, so I moved them up. But my 19 is actually the Houston Outlaws. I think they basically did that Moneyball approach too, and kind of like more than half. Yeah, basically their whole roster is kind of new, besides like 2 or 3 players like Mumu, Linkser, and Dante, or even like Raucus. But I think they're just kind of like a group of players. I don't think they'll like mesh very well, honestly, with this team, and the fact that like most of their former players are like on their management now, which is kind of interesting, but that's a whole nother story.
Jake's a caster now.
Yeah, they're just like get people out of what their team was. Yeah, but I don't think they'll mesh very well at all. Definitely bottom 15 team for sure.
All right, this is a very spicy take, and I will acknowledge
ready.
that from the beginning. I put the London Spitfire as my 19th team.
Whoa. Okay.
And here's my reasoning why. The Spitfire are one of the only teams that we have almost completely new face on there. They dropped all of their like big talent that won them the first season, except for Krillin, who was largely on the bench for the season. And of course, this might just be because I don't pay enough attention to Tier 2 Overwatch, which I will take full responsibility for.
That's fair.
None of the names, with like the exception of like Glister, I think, is the one that like really like stand out to me. And I feel that the reason I put them so low is like it's a lot of unproven talent at the big stage. And I don't know if they're gonna really be able to mesh into a full team. Like I can see them picking up steam in the second half of the season once they've got like their whole meshing thing, but it's like you got a lot of players with no Overwatch League talent like experience right now that have to like jump into the hero pools and the traveling. I'm not sold that they're going to be that good this year.
That is definitely a hot take for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I don't watch too much like contenders or any of T2 Overwatch. I could say that myself too. Yeah, after doing some research, you could see like some of this team is definitely they're like mostly new like contenders players. But yeah, I don't know. I think they could be kind of good. For some reason, I don't have them much further on my list, but I think they'll definitely be better than like an Uprising, maybe in a Valiant and stuff like that as well.
So for my number 19, I put the Florida Mayhem. So this one was a little bit hard for me because I think the Mayhem, they've had rough times. They tried to switch things up during the mid-season of this last season, but they haven't really had too much success. Now, it seems like this season they're essentially trying to reshape and try to keep what works. So they're keeping one of the best Soma players on in the Overwatch League in general, in BQB. But they also got new lifeblood coming up. They have sort of a fresh new 18-year-old coming to the scene, and his name is Yaki. And it seems like he has great potential. He has a huge variety of damage heroes. So maybe with the new addition of lifeblood, we can see the Florida Mayhem come up and be successful. But I still think that with this unproven player, that I'm still going to place him low. But I would love to be surprised.
And I think that's also a perfect segue into my 18th ranked team, who I have is the Florida Mayhem. I think there is that slight possibility that it's just kind of an unknown to us, and I guess to a lot of people, it's just that we don't know what they're really going to be like. They could be pretty good, actually. I mean, I think they've made steps in the right direction by changing their colors, strangely, doing what the Valiant couldn't. Making their new color scheme look good and represent their city a lot more. I think there's out of a lot of these bottom tier teams, I would say like out of the bottom three, they have the best chance, obviously. Out of the bottom, like I'm gonna say bottom 5 or so, I think, yeah, maybe they can make that playoff push towards the end of the year, but a lot of things need to go right for that team.
I think the one thing that I sort of want to believe in it is that in esports we see a lot of sort of new challengers come up and surprise everybody. So although I have placed these guys with the sort of the bottom 5, I think that there is great potential. These players are on the Overwatch League for a reason. They do have the skills to be here, but it's sort of there needs to be something that pushes them forward. So I think the key, and this is what the Valiant were going for, is that they have a bunch of new lifeblood. And hopefully that new lifeblood will have some hidden talents that we don't see.
Yeah, some might say that is even a hot take there for you guys. As we can go into my 18th pick, a little higher up than you guys, Boston Uprising. I don't think there will be a great team. Yeah, they're basically what the Houston Outlaws did, just get a bunch of players and see if they mesh together. Maybe a little later in the season they will somewhat come together. But yeah, right now I don't see them being any big thing at all.
All right. Well, my 18th pick is one that's already been mentioned. That's where I place the Houston Outlaws, which is a team that that peaked in stage 1 of season 1, and it's been consistently downhill for them ever since then. I believe I put them this low because I think that losing Jake is actually a bit more of a blow than the team left on. Like, Jake was a mid-tier DPS player in his own right, but he was also indisputably the team leader. He was the one that organized the comm structure. He organized the comm structure. He was the team leader, so on and so forth. And while the Outlaws got a lot of good pickups on paper, they got a couple of good new DPS and hydration, and I think it was Blase. And then they got Meko as an off-tank and support line alternatives, which both were definitely needed given their current talent. I'm not really certain that it's going to work out that well because this is a team that's been a core English-speaking team for its first 2 years, and you still have a lot of that core left behind. How are they going to transition to being a mixed language team? I don't think that's going to work out that well, at least initially. This is a team that I could see making a mid-table push towards the end of the season once they mesh, but at the very beginning, I think they're going to struggle a lot.
So for my number 18, I put the Boston Uprising as well. And it was mostly for the same reason as the host here. It just kind of feels like they just want to get a bunch of new players together and hope for the best. Now, as I've said previously, I hope that can be a good thing. I really want that to succeed. I love a good underdog story. But for that reason, I do have to place them in the bottom because just a lot of unprovens.
Yeah. Going up to 17, this is where I put Houston. I think as a Gladiators fan, I'll come out and just say it now. As a Gladiators fan, it was so much fun watching Hydration. He's such a good player. And I think now that we're moving into that hero ban meta, this could be a really good thing for Houston. I moved them up a little bit from my initial rankings. The only thing that I think is going to slow them down is how much they play Muma. I don't think he's a very good main tank.
Oh, God.
So I think their pickups were good, and again, the mix of a lot of Korean players and a lot of Western players, it's going to be interesting to see how they mesh this year. I don't know if it's going to work because there's also some big personalities on his team. And then what you guys were saying with the loss of Jake is going to be big. That is big because you're going from one of the guys who was one of the best shot callers in the league, I think. There's a great clip of him online talking after a play, and his mouth is just moving a mile a minute. It's great. And then you're replacing that with Hydration, a guy who's known for literally never talking in game. He's great. They're both great, but the communication's going to go way down, I think.
Yeah, I don't know about Outlaws right now, honestly. I'm really hoping for Uprising and Outlaws that they will eventually mesh and maybe down the line, definitely come together. With my 17th, I will go with the Valiants. After all the things that have been said, I put them a little higher on the list. I'm still not 100% sure about this. They're a little flexible definitely within this list. I mean, I think Apply is pretty good DPS. I mean, Shax is alright, KSF pretty good. I just think that we'll have to actually see them play for us to actually figure out if they're good or not right now. I don't know if Baby Bay is trolling us all or what is going on. But we'll definitely see for sure. I don't know.
All right, so I'm the first person to bring this team up. My number 17 pick is the Paris Eternal. My reasoning for that is they were a subpar mid-table team last year, but unlike many of the subpar mid-table teams, they didn't really make a lot of changes that'll help them in the present. They're doing what I'm calling the Season 1 shock approach. They're putting a lot of hope in a very talented player who's currently not 18 yet in Sparkle, who once he reaches age, I feel will be able to really like reach his potential, and when combining with Soon, I think that has potential to be a very scary DPS duo. But the tank line and the support lines, I'd say, are mid-tier at best. They don't really inspire confidence, and while there is a lot of depth there, it's not really something that inspires confidence to really like match up against a team like the San Francisco Shock, in my opinion.
So I swear I did not copy the host list before this, but I also put the Valiant as my number 17. And this mainly comes down to the tank line. The players they have on this tank lane are pretty unproven with Gig and the other player on this tank line. So, and as for the reasons the host listed, and I think that's just for most of this, sort of bottom tier, it's a lot of unproven players here. So with that, I think that's just why I put most of like the 15 through 20 list on this list.
Yeah. Well, Josh, why don't we do 16 and 15 there? Let's see.
Yeah. So my 16 is Washington Justice. My notes literally say Corey and that's it, because that's literally this entire team. It is Corey and that's it. But that being said, Corey's really good, guys. Like I always hear this like, oh, don't listen to World Cup things. That's not the everything. But man, his World Cup performance this year was great. I think he should have won MVP. And also I really don't like their pickup of Roar. I didn't think he was a great main tank on the Gladiators. Our engineer in the background is freaking out, and he's wearing a Shock jersey, so that's not a good thing.
Nope.
Yeah, he's been consistently doing that.
Yeah, very good. I'm sure he's playing Gwent, which is a card game if anyone knows. And then my 15 team is going to be Chengdu. I don't know. Chengdu. Thank you, dyslexia. The Hunters. So they are the most Chinese team. Like most of their players are from China, and they're not going to have the opportunity to play in China because of the coronavirus. And I think that really might actually take a toll on this team. And it is a really unfortunate situation. This is also a team that really didn't make that many changes this offseason, and they were kind of mediocre towards the end of last season. They missed the playoffs and everything. I don't expect them to do a lot. In fact, I could even see them maybe even going down on this in my power rankings end of the season.
Yeah, I'll go into my 16th and 15th pick. 16, I have the Dallas Fuel. I don't know. I think like them losing a lot of their roster this offseason really might bring them down for this season, honestly. Me being a Dallas Fuel fan, this kind of hurts putting them here. But I really do think that it's AKM and Unco are kind of underperforming, and I really think it's bringing down the team right now, and I think it will definitely be a cohesive team, but they're going to definitely have to work on a lot to like actually get to where they want to be, because they definitely underperformed towards the end of last season, and it was basically unwatchable for them at all. And then 15, I actually have the Paris Eternal. I do think that they do have some pretty good DPS, to be honest, with Soon and Nico. I'm also a Paris Eternal fan. I do love the old Rogue roster back in Apex. But yeah, I think their DPS is definitely the thing that shines a little bit. They still need to be improvement, but I don't know. They have some weak tanks, and that's just, I don't know. I think that's where they're just going to start falling off, is definitely with their tank lineup for sure.
All right, so I also have for my 16th place team is the Dallas Fuel, and reasoning I put them there is they're a team that has been consistently overrated at the beginning of the last two teams and then has subsequently disappointed, and they're going to have a lot of pressure this year, more so than I think any other team, to kind of dispel of that, which having the Dallas homestand, I believe, at the very beginning of the season might be a good chance for them to turn things around. But that also is a double-edged sword, because if they underperform there, then you got that to worry about for the rest of the season. I do think they got a lot of good pickups in the offseason compared to some other teams. You reunite Gamzu and Note, who have been proven to be a very good tank duo together. You got DK, who's a very good DPS from the Gladiators. You got Crimzo, who's a pretty good off support. But the rest of the pieces, I think, don't match this like new talent that they brought in, so they're really going to have to step up in order to make this team a contender. And then for my 15th place, I have the Florida Mayhem, which is higher than most of the rest of you, but it's another lower tier team that I think had a pretty good off season. They got a pretty good set of pickups coming in for them. In particular, I like seeing Fate and Saya Player and those two being built around, because that's a good main tank, that's an excellent DPS, and we saw signs of what this team could be, I think, at the end of last season, that now that they've had a lot more time to practice together and mesh together, could end up being good. What I'm concerned about is, are we still in the rebuilding phase for the Mayhem, or is this the phase where it's like they finally start to rise in the tier? And it's like, once we figure that out, I think it'll be a lot easier to place them, but right now it's kind of difficult.
Mm-hmm.
So for my 16 and 15, I put number 16, the Toronto Defiant. And then for 15, I put the Houston Outlaws. So for the Toronto Defiant, they had a pretty troubling season. But what they did do was that they decided, okay, let's try to get a bunch of Canadians on our team and see how that goes. So essentially, they took a bunch of key players from the Overwatch World Cup and took a bunch of them from Team Canada. And they have some pretty promising stuff. And I think the new sort of lock is going to play a huge thing into that. They have one of the best hit scan players in that team. So if we're going to start seeing shields down, I think we're going to start seeing that sort of player thrive and start seeing Widowmaker start popping off 1 and 2. And then for 15, we have the Houston Outlaws. And you're going to start seeing a pretty common theme with my next picks, and that's going to be communication and communication. So Houston Outlaws, they used to be an all-American team, but now they have their first Koreans on the team, and that's going to cause some serious breakdowns. So I think if they can't figure out how to communicate with their team, that's going to be a huge challenge. I don't care how good your Genji or how good your Doomfist is. If you can't communicate with your supports or your tanks or anybody else, you're going to have a rough time.
Yeah. Yeah, so my 14-13, it's the two European teams, ironically, and then I'm also going to go ahead and say I think that these two teams, the only thing that separates them from kind of these bottom teams is going to be their home stands. I think that's going to be a bigger factor than people think. So 14, I have London, completely a new team. We have no idea what they're going to look like this year, and I think that could be a good thing. I think that could be a bad thing. But I do think the one thing they for sure have going to them is their home stands. Their home stands are going to be nuts. We have the Call of Duty League going to London this weekend, and it's going to be a great crowd. London always has some great crowds, and I expect that they'll show up for the Spitfire as well. It seems like when they've had events in London, they've had a great turnout, and I think they're going to get that same turnout for these games. And I think that could propel them, because you get that energy, you get that momentum, and I think it could help this what would be a struggling team. I think it could really help them. And then 13, I have Paris Eternal. I love Soon. Soon is such a fun player to watch, especially if he can start breaking out the Widow a little bit more. I think they're going to really struggle at the beginning of the season. They picked up Sparkle, who is rumored to be one of the best, probably the best DPS pickup this offseason. Only issue is he won't turn 18 until, I think they said, like,
I think it was stage 3.
Yes, I don't know if they're doing stages, but like 3/4 of the way through the season, yeah. So I don't think they're going to be. I think when it gets to that point, they might be unstoppable. Like, I think there's a chance we could be talking about them like making a very late playoff push, which is why they're 13. But I think they're going to struggle at the beginning. And again, I think their homestands are going to be fun. Look up the when Paris hosted the World Cup a few years ago. Their fans were awesome, and I expect it to be the same exact fans for this.
Yep, perfect. Yeah. Sorry, into my 14, I have the Florida Mayhem. Yeah, same thing that you were saying over here. So I was a little higher up. Yeah, I love Fate and Saya Player. I think Saya Player is one of the best tracers and just DPS in general. I love watching him. When they picked him up, I was very excited that whole time. I just think, yeah, they're a very middle of the pack team, at least to me. Besides Fate and Saya Player, another team really is that impressive, at least on paper, at least right now to me. I don't want much contenders, but at least none of them stand out to me right now. I would like to be pleasantly surprised by this team, and yes, their colors do look amazing now, and I might just get a jersey just because I love the black and pink. It's such a dope color.
Yeah.
London Spitfire is going to be my 13. So completely new team, but for some reason it fits for me. I mean, either we've said before, a lot of the other teams we have here are going to be all new players, and we kind of put them lower. But for some reason, London Spitfire just fits together for me a lot more. They are also a very middle of the pack team, at least for me. Still a lot of contenders and everything like that. I mean, they got rid of basically all their name brand players for a whole new roster. But it's going to be interesting definitely for them. I really am hoping that Florida and London definitely have an interesting season and prove hopefully all of us wrong with our standings.
Yeah, I think it's unanimously agreed that Florida had the best upgrade in colors of the three teams that got new ones easily. All right, for my 14th pick, this is where I put the LA Valiant, and this was mostly in due to the fact that they're getting a shit ton of scrim bucks from what we've been hearing as well. It's they're almost unrecognizable from last year, but they did keep a couple of good pieces. I like them keeping KSF and Shax. I think McGravy could be a good player once he really gets his time to shine as well. And then it's the same thing with a bunch of other teams. There's a lot of unproven talents, a lot of names that I don't know, but I'm gonna trust in what the players have said, the multiple sources that have said that they've been really good in the scrims. However, I will also admit that there are also a lot of question marks around this team. The only other team that I have this many question marks around is the Spitfire, so they could be anywhere from upper mid tier, I think, to definitely bottom tier in my opinion. And my 13th team is the Chengdu Hunters. I believe that they're a team that's consistently underrated. They could be pretty good, especially, and I think that this is the team that will probably thrive the most as a whole from the hero pool changes. They've always done these wacky and weird comps that rarely fit in the meta. They've never really stuck to the meta, and I think that they could have a lot of flexibility. Plus, they got a new player, I think, because it's Leave, who's supposed to be one of the best Chinese players who's going to be of age this year, who will add some much needed depth to their DPS lineup. The one thing I'm worried about is whether their team as a whole would be able to stack up to the top tier proven talent, and that's why I have them at 13th instead of higher on the line.
So for my choices, I have the London Spitfire and the Guangzhou Charge. London Spitfire, I think, have a lot of potential, and I think they are going to get a boost, like Josh said, with the homestays, but they do have a lot of rookies on their team. But I do think this is a team with a lot of potential within their rookie pool. In the Guangzhou Charge, for them, they have one of the problems where they have a mix of Chinese and Koreans. And we saw that one team had a particular problem with that last season. So I think that we're going to start seeing this pop up again. And, communication is one of the most important things of any game, especially Overwatch, where you need to know where everybody is at a specific point in time. So I think that with that communication problem, I think it's going to cause a huge issue for them. But I do think that they do have the potential to overcome that barrier.
Yep. So I'll jump in with my numbers 12 and 11. We'll kind of speed up just a little bit. We want to make sure we can get to everything and not keep you guys listening for 4 hours. Because we probably could go on for 4 hours if we really wanted to.
Oh, we definitely could.
Yeah. So 12, I have Toronto Defiant. I think easily they have the best DPS in the league. But the issue is that's all they have. I don't know. I'm not too thrilled about their tanks. They only have 2 tanks, Nevix and Beast. One of them ends up getting hurt. I know it sounds crazy. Injuries. Something happens, then they're kind of screwed. They are really going to struggle. But Surefour is going to absolutely thrive in this new meta. It's going to be kind of fun to watch Toronto. And then next I got the Guangzhou Charge. Another great DPS, Nero. I love Nero. I think he's one of the best Western tanks players, and it's great that see him and Neptuno on a Chinese team. I think that's going to be some great chemistry there. It is a weird mix, but I think they'll make it work. They did at the end of last year. They went on that crazy losing streak, but I don't think they'll do that this year. I think they're going to be pretty solid.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, going into my 12th pick, I have the Chengdu Hunters.
Chengdu.
Chengdu. Yeah, I don't know either. Yeah, so I do believe that they have one of. You just said that. I do agree with you. Defiant do have a really good lineup for DPS, but I really do believe that the Hunters have definitely top three DPS lineups. I mean, Bacon Jack, yeah, leave once he gets actually in. Jinwoo, they're actually a solid DPS lineup. Only thing a problem is like I think supports for them is kind of iffy, but this is definitely one of the teams on my list that's like super flexible where I put them. They're a little high. I would like to put them a little lower, but I want to see them actually in play for me to move them around for sure. And with 11, I have the Guangzhou Charge too. I think their support lineup is very interesting. Definitely with Shu and Neptuno. Yeah, Nero is going to be very interesting to watch, especially with Happy as well. They should be a pretty solid team all around. They do have some weird communication, mostly Korean stuff, but I mean, with Neptuno and stuff, it's going to be definitely interesting. And I think I love Neptuno. I'm also a support main, so like, I love watching him. Yeah.
All right. Well, this seems to be the popular consensus because I also have the Guangzhou Charge at as my rank 12 team. I do think there's a lot of raw individual talent here. Nero, especially. I'd also like to highlight Shu. Shu's a pretty good support player that doesn't get a lot of recognition. They're also still a young team. Last year, I think they were the net youngest team in the entire league, and that obviously hasn't changed since it's only been 1 year. So they're only going to keep getting better as we go on through the league. If there's one thing that I don't really like about this team, it's that the tank line is there's not a lot of depth to it, and it's probably mid-tier at best, but it's like supports I think will get a boost from having Neptuno. DPS are very solid. Overall, pretty good team. My rank 11, which I think is higher than any of you guys put these ones, is the Washington Justice. And
Interesting.
I didn't realize you still had it open, yeah.
Yeah. The reason for that is I'm pretty high on Corey. Corey is like probably one of the best DPS in the league right now, in my opinion. And Stratus, I think, isn't quite as good, but he's a good complement to him. The two of them have good synergy. They work well together. The support line's decent. I like Arc. I think AimGod will be a good addition to them. And the Swedish tank duo that they picked up of Lulsish and Elevote, I think they're going to be a bit underrated. They're going to be a mid-tier tank team, but last year when I think the tanks, especially Giannis, was like one of the main problems of the team, anything that would be an upgrade over him. I will say that they don't have as much depth as some of the other teams do, so that could definitely be a problem as we get into the later season. You start getting worn out, you start seeing more hero pools have problems, but I do think that they have the potential to be a top half team.
All right, and for me, I have the Paris Eternal and the Chengdu Hunters. And for me, the one thing that I am pretty much relying on for the Chengdu Hunters is that new blood with Leave. He looked extremely good during the Overwatch World Cup, and I really think that he has the potential to just completely wipe everybody on the floor with what I saw during the Overwatch World Cup.
Mine 10 and 9. So 10, I got Dallas Fuel. I feel like I'm a little high on them, but also I haven't heard you guys yet about it, or most of you. But I think they made some great trades this offseason. Getting Decay, picking up Gamsu and Note. That chemistry between the two of them is going to be really good. I'm high on this team. They're going to have 5 home games, one of the most in the league. I think that's going to be an advantage. I really do. And then I also think that this is going to be a make or break year for this franchise. So many of their fans have been promised great things, and they just never follow through.
I feel it. No, I really do.
Yep.
It's very sad.
So I think it will be an interesting year for the Fuel. And then next I have the Soul Dynasty. Profit and Gesture, that pickup, huge. I think, I do think that they will make a huge impact on this team. But I still think their tanks might be a bit of an issue. I just don't. Something about this franchise, both these franchises, Dallas and Seoul, something I just can't fully commit to it. There's just something there. I do think Seoul's homestands are going to be nuts. Seoul's the capital of esports, and having a team representing Seoul in their stadium. If you look up pictures of the stadium they're playing in, it is beautiful. It's going to be a really fun place to play.
Yeah. I have for my 10 LA Gladiators. I do love all of the tanks here. Bishu, OGE, I really do love OGE. I Dallas feel, I do love Space too. I mean, keeping Big Goose and Shaz, amazing support duo there. And they got Birdring. Come on, Birdring. Definitely a great DPS there. I just can't wait to see this team play, honestly. For me, they're just not a little lower on the list. Just, I don't know. I think definitely some of the superior teams are superior for a reason. They are just, even though they are great, they're not to those levels yet. My next is going to be the Seoul Dynasty. Same place, 9 there for you. Yeah, DPS, Profit. They have Jester, Bedoshin. Yep, I got it right. Okay. Toby definitely a support. I think this team's going to be great. Definitely might even be an underdog, honestly. I would definitely love to see them maybe move up and take down some of these bigger teams, especially. I'm excited for them for sure.
All right, so I'm actually kind of surprised I ranked this one higher than you, Josh, because my rank 10 is the Toronto Defiant. I think that they're going to be this year's underrated dark horse. In my opinion, they had one of the top 3 off seasons of any team in this league, which basically got them from bottom tier to at least upper mid tier. You got a very stacked DPS lineup. I can find good things to say about all 4 of them: Logix, Surefour, Agilities, Mangachu. Kariv is a much-needed addition to their support line. He's been consistently good for the Valiant. I can't imagine it'll be any different on the Defiant. I also think that Nevix is a bit underrated because a lot of people kind of forgot about him since he was largely backing up to Choi Ho-bin on the Shock last year. But I think that he'll be decent enough to hold his own on this team. The 2 things that I do have a problem with are their main tank and their main support. I've never heard of this main tank. It'll remain to be seen if he's any good. And then Kelix has had, and their main support is he's had questionable performances on the Uprising the last 2 years. It'll be interesting to see if he can improve or if it's more of the same from him. And then for 9, another kind of spicy pick, I have the Hangzhou Spark. They were they were a top 4 team last year. They, much like a lot of the other top teams, they've made few additions to their present roster. And building around Gushui especially has been a smart move. Gushui is one of the top main tanks in the league, in my opinion. However, the reason I put them at 9th and not higher is they don't really have the depth nor the proven meta resistance of the Shock, because if I'm remembering correctly, last year they had 2 really great stages and 2 subpar stages, which were pretty dependent on the meta, and the only pickups they made were 2 new supports. I don't really see those new supports fixing that problem and keeping them in top 8.
All right, for my 2, I have the Hangzhou Spark and the Philadelphia Fusion. For the Philadelphia Fusion, they've mostly kept most of their core team. And from what I saw last year, I think that if they can keep what they got going, they got some good stuff going, they got some stuff brewing up. I think they keep that brewing up. That's going to be a smooth ride for them to keep sailing for this season.
Yeah. Funny you mentioned those 2 teams because they are my 8 and 7. 8, I got Philadelphia Fusion. Great mix of players. I think a lot of reliability there. They're gonna have one of the coolest stadiums in the Overwatch League. They're building a stadium for them. So cool. I think the big thing is, can Carpe bring this team back to glory? I think if he can pop off again, they're gonna be great. And then the Spark, they were a great GOATS team. They really dominated when that was the meta. But we're going to be seeing some new things. I think they struggled a bit towards the end of the season. They didn't have a great playoff run against the Gladiators. I was at that game, and it was a great matchup. But I think that a week ago we saw them, and they easily beat the Gladiators. And then 1 week later they lost him in the playoffs. And it was not that much of a different meta. And I think they're struggling, and they might struggle a bit this year. But they're still going to be good. They still have a good lineup.
Yeah, I think I have.
I also really wanted to mention some breaking news that I just opened Twitter to see. Achilles and Wolf just announced that they will be returning to the broadcast this year.
Ooh.
So in a year of losing broadcasters, some good news because those guys are great. It's gonna be really fun to see.
Perfect. Yeah, that's some great news. I think I have this. Have them the lowest on the list. I might think. I have the Shanghai Dragons next. Yeah, great DPS again from Fleta, DM. The only thing that really scares me with this team is their tank lineup, to be honest. I I mean, they just picked up Fearless, but like, he's legitimately like fearless. Like we saw him back, and he would just dive. Like he just went in, and would like it seemed like no coordination at all. This is the only thing that scares me if they do start him, that he is just gonna do what he did in the past and just ruin this perfectly good DPS that they have, at least right now, in the whole team. Next, I have the Vancouver Titans. Actually, I think that's the lowest they're going to put on their list. I do think this team's great. I mean, Ryu Jae-hong, Fissure, Hacksaw. They have a great team. They have a really small roster, surprisingly, from like a lot of the rest of the teams. Not a lot on bench, but I'm pretty excited, and I think they'll be great this season, honestly. And we've said underdogs a lot, but I really do think they might be underdogs with this lineup for sure.
All right, for my rank 8, I have the Seoul Dynasty, although at this point we might as well just call them the Seoul Spitfire because I think they picked up like 3 or 4 of the former Spitfire players in the off-season. Picking up Prophet was an amazing choice. Picking up Bedoshin's pretty good, although I think he'll be somewhat lackluster in comparison to losing Ryu Jae-hong. Gesture, I think, actually will have a better situation here than he did on London because Gesture at his peak, he really pops off, but when he struggled, he struggled, and having a competent, like, proven main tank and Marvel as his backup will definitely help the Dynasty, like, when Gesture has, like, those off days. The thing that I'm interested in seeing is, does the rest of this team stack up to what they did last year, because they lost arguably 2 of their best players in Fleta and Jae-hong to other teams, so will the rest of the team be able to fill in their shoes? And for my 7th team, I have the Philadelphia Fusion. They're a strong team with a powerhouse DPS duo that when Carpe is on, it's like he's insane. Few can match him. They got really strong pickups in the offseason with Fury, and then Alarm is one of the names that I recognize from contenders that I think will be a good addition to their support duo. However, there's also a couple of questionable decisions in my mind, like they didn't get another main tank to replace Sato, who in my opinion is the weakest link of the team. And then there's the Chipsa question.
That I was about to bring that up. I was about to say they got a bunch of great pickups and then Chipsa.
Yeah, it's like Chipsa's a Doomfist one trick at this point. He'll probably be decent when like Doomfist is in the meta, but then when you get him in like the hero pools once Doomfist is no longer the thing, I honestly envision seeing him as this season's XQC or Defran, and that he's this really popular streamer that got, and somewhat controversial streamer that got picked up by a team. He'll probably last for like the first month or so, and then he'll retire at the end of it, returning to streaming as a main job after generating a massive fan base. That's my prediction with him.
Mm-hmm.
All right, for my 8 and 7, I have the Dallas Field and the Seoul Dynasty. So the Dallas Field, they exceeded in the tank sort of GOATS meta, but they weren't able to adapt after that. So we'll see if they can adapt to see if they can make it with this new patch that's coming out, and we have all the changes coming. But I have faith in them. And then for the Seoul Dynasty, they're really good. And then when they come to that stadium and they're going to feel the energy of the crowd, I think they're going to perform to their best ability.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, why don't we... I think most of our top 6, top 5-ish are all kind of going to look the same. At least looking at mine, I think might be a little different. But yeah, why don't you just go straight through top 6 and see how we all kind of compare here?
Yeah, so number 6, I'm going to go with my boys in purple, LA Gladiators. I think they got the best coaching in the league. I think they have the best support duo, potentially the best tank line. Space is nuts, and OG is going to be really fun to watch. Those two are going to be so cool together. Their biggest question is those DPS. Can Birdring actually care about the game? They also have some of their other pickups were not like some of their, I would say, secondary players are not the most exciting. Like we don't know Mirror, Paintbrush, and I cannot remember I didn't write down the other person they picked up. But some of their pickups are not LH Cloudy. Like they're gonna be good, but I don't know how much playtime they're gonna get. Next, Vancouver Titans. No idea what this team's doing. Rai Ju-hong is an exciting pickup, but also at the same time, I really don't even know how much playtime he's gonna get. Fissure, like seriously, I think he's gonna probably. There's a good chance this team can implode. But that being said, that core runaway is still there minus Bumper. And I think they're still going to be successful. And someone please sign Bumper. He's such a good tank. Like, he's so good. He's aggressive, but he's good. My 4, and I think I have them pretty high, Atlanta Reign. I think there's a chance they can make it to the finals this year. They're really good. Baby Bay is a great DPS, and a lot of people have been talking this guy down, but I think Dogman is going to be really good. Dogman and Baby Bay are 2 of my favorite players in the league. I think they treat this like a professional sport. Like, you see them when they play, it's kind of like Call of Duty, where like they're standing up, they're screaming, they're having fun. I am a little concerned about their tanks, but ultimately I think Atlantis could be good. 3, I have Shanghai Dragons. I was watching, I think it was Plat Chat. They were really crapping on Void, which Void is a great off tank. And not only that, they picked up Fleta. They picked up Fearless just the other day. That's going to be a really good team. Like, I think if they could just find their identity, which I think they can do in the first couple weeks, they're going to be a really great team. My number 2, NYXL. Great pickups this offseason. I love the Hotba pickup. He's a great main tank. I think there's a chance this could be the year. Like, we keep hearing, like, this is the year for NYXL. And I know it's only been 2 years, but, like, this could really be the year where they make it to the finals and maybe even win it. And I got to shout out Pine for being one of the best players to watch in it. Overwatch League, we're really going to miss him. Number 1, no surprises. I think that's everyone's number 1 team. San Francisco Shock. No changes. Team's going to be amazing. I think the only thing that can really stop them is just another hot team. See if someone gets hotter. Yeah, and that's ending out my power rankings.
All right, yeah, let me go through mine. I think I think I have this definitely the highest on the list for everyone. I have the insane placement of putting the Toronto Defiant at 6 here.
It's not insane though. Like, I went through it in my head. I thought that could happen.
See, I just think thinking about hero pools, I really think that this team could shine with hero pools.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all know Surefour is probably like the most flexible DPS in probably the Overwatch League. I think Agilities is also a great DPS. I mean, yes, their tanks are a little iffy, but I really do think that with hero pools, this team could definitely shine. For 5, I have the Atlanta Reign. Yeah, I do think they're a really flexible team as well. They are a little bit better. I think their tanks and everything are a little bit better. I do see them as, we've said this plenty of times, and we'll probably say it plenty of times more, that they really do have an underdog story going here. They really can pull this together for sure, and maybe even win a finals. For 4, it's 3. Yeah, for 3, I have the Fusion. I do believe in Carpe. I love Carpe, and I even believe in EQO. I don't think a lot of people think that he is that great of DPS, but I really do think he's a great DPS. Even with this flexible, with hero pools as well, he plays some of the the heroes we don't really see. Like, he's a great Genji, if that would even become a thing with hero pools. Chipsa. We all really know why they picked him up. Doomfist, Fury, great tank. For my number 2, I did not actually put them number 1. I put the San Francisco Shock. They are the champs, of course, but they are the same old great team. I really do believe that number 1 this year will be the New York XL. I love them. I really do believe this is their year. And yes, we do miss Pine. I miss Pine. Please come back to us. He is literally the best player to watch in Overwatch League. Definitely throughout the first season for sure. That rounds off mine.
All right, so I'm actually going to do a last-second change from what's written here to my power rankings. For number 6, I'm going to put the Atlanta Reign. They're on the cusp of being a top-tier team, in my opinion, where we have to remember they're the only team that took maps off of the San Francisco Shock last year, let alone beat them in the playoffs. They have a lot of big personalities in Baby Bay and Dogman. I personally think that's a bit of a double-edged sword because, yes, it's like you get a lot of hype generated from that. Sometimes you can also get a lot of criticism from that. The tank line doesn't really excite me, but they have great potential. I totally see them as being able to make the push to get to the top 4 in the end of the season if things work out for them. Number 5, I have the Shanghai Dragons, another team that has potential to be top tier, but I think is just on the outside of it right now, same as the Atlanta Reign, which is why I flipped the 2 of them. They got great pickups in the offseason. I think picking up Fleta was good. Picking up Void was really good. Fearless will be interesting because I personally am excited to see Fearless play now that he actually has a competent support line behind him, because I feel like half the reason that he did so poorly in Season 1 was because the support line was lackluster. The main tank position as a whole is probably a bit weaker than the rest of the team for Shanghai, because you do have Fearless, who we don't know how he'll play with this new team, and you got, I think it's Stand One, who's I've never heard of before, but it's like, if the main tank can step up, the team as the whole, like, meshes very well. This is a team that I think have the potential to rival San Francisco Shock in terms of pure skill. My rank 4 is the Vancouver Titans. The reason, and it's like they really didn't change much in the offseason. They still have that same great runaway core. I think that picking up Jae Hong was a good pickup, if not for experience, then nothing else. The reason they're not higher is, of course, the Fissure question. Because, like, Fissure, if he plays his on-game, if he takes this seriously, is a team player, he's an amazing main tank. Like, I think he's a lot of the reason the Gladiators were as good as they were Season 1. But the thing is he's also a big personality, he's a bit of a diva, and his pass volatility leaves doubts for him. We have to remember this is the 4th team he's been on in 3 years, so it's like, if he fits well with this team, I think they'll be probably one of the best, if not the best teams in the league. However, if he doesn't, the Titans have taken quite a gamble, because Fissure's the only main tank that they have, and if they lose him as a main tank, then what are they going to do from there? Rank 3, I have as the Gladiators. They're going to be the breakout team in this year, in my opinion. The tank line of OG in space is going to be very scary.
Let's hope.
Yeah. Bishu's a good backup to space. Cloudy is not flashy, but I think he'll be competent enough that if OG needs to take rest again this year, that he'll be able to hold his own there. The support line of Shaz and Big Goose is consistently underrated from what I've been seeing, but they're great. I think they're probably one of the most, if not the most cohesive, like, support lines in the entire league. The DPS are largely unproven from what I've gathered, but they have great potential. If Birdring is able to turn it on like he was, like, during the peak of the Spitfire, he'll be very good. I'm personally excited to see what Mir can do. Yeah. Rank 2 is the NYXL, same as a lot of people, except for this guy here. Probably have the second strongest, like, core, like, players in, like, the entire league, tied for Titans, in my opinion. Losing Meko over the offseason was unfortunate, because Meko and Mono were a very good tank duo together, but Hotba, I think, is more than worthy as being his replacement. And I'm going to be in the minority here. I think that actually cutting Flower and Pine was a good decision for the team, even though it's unfortunate that Pine got cut. I think it was a good decision for the team as a whole. It means that they don't have quite as many DPS players. It's one of the things NYXL had as a problem last year, is they had too many good DPS players. By cutting those two, they have a chance to really focus on Sabiolbi, on Nene, really get that DPS core, like, solidified. Each core of the team is great. You got Sabiolbi, you got Mono, you got the support line of Jonak and Anamo. It's a really good team. And much of this is a big surprise. I have the San Francisco Shock as my rank 1 team. They're the powerhouses from last year. They prove they have the depth. They're very meta resistant. They can play entirely different teams and still dominate, with, like, the only, like, thing in common being their support line. They didn't really make a lot of changes. I think they dropped Nevix. They picked up one extra, I think it was DPS, but it's like, why do you need to improve on perfection? This was the greatest team last year. They still have the potential to be the greatest team this year.
All right, so for my number 6, I have the LA Gladiators. For me, the LA Gladiators have always been a great team, but they have never been the team. So, like, they've always had great potential, but, like, they haven't been able to, like, break that wall. Like, they always hit a roadblock. Like, you always hear how good they are, but they aren't ever able to push that. So, I can't see that changing for this season unless there's something I don't see. For 5, I have the Atlanta Reign. 1, because I always love a good underdog story, but with Baby Bay and Dogman coming into the fold, I think that they can carry this team and they can do great things for this team. And I think we'll start seeing that this season. Next is Shanghai Dragons at number 4. Seeing the journey of the Shanghai Dragons from, like, the first season going 0-40, but then they actually won a stage in the second season, it's just, it's crazy. And to see them that with their picks this year, and to see, like, oh my god, these guys, they have a chance this year. They're going to do really good. I just had to put them there for me. Number 3, I had to put the Vancouver Titans. This one was a hard one for me. I had a really hard time between this one and my next pick, but everybody loves a good revenge story, and I think that after that really crushing defeat last year with the San Francisco Shock going 0-4, I think that this year that they will come back with a vengeance and try to come back and claw their way out and try to come back and take the title. But with that said, my number 2 is the New York Excel with Hotba, and I think they have what it takes to do number 2, and that's just the little things that you see with them being able to do the damage and having their great tank line. I think those little things are putting them ahead of the Vancouver Titans. And my number 1, I mean, no surprise here, it is the San Francisco Shock. The meta hasn't changed too much ever since the Grand Finals. They've mostly kept things the same. They did swap out with one player, which I think this new player is arguably better than the one they swapped out with. So I think with those things, and the meta isn't changing, I think that they are going to be the ones taking the title this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that's about to wrap up Power Ranks. We can all just go very quickly through just 1 through 20, do our final just list here. You want to start there, Josh?
Yeah, and then I'll also go ahead and say my Grand Finals prediction as well.
Yeah.
So I got Uprising, starting at the bottom on my way up. Uprising, Valiant, Mayhem, Outlaws, Justice, Hunters, Spitfire, Eternal, Defiant, Charge, Fuel, Dynasty, Fusion, Spark, Gladiators, Titans, Reigns, Dragon, NYXL, and Shock. My Grand Finals is going to be the NYXL versus the San Francisco Shock, and I think NYXL is going to do it. I think they're going to be our champions for 2020. Yeah, 2020.
I like that. All right, I'll go through mine. Yeah, so first I have Excelsior, Shock, Fusion, Reign, Defiant, Titans, Shanghai, Soul Dynasty, LA Gladiators, Spark, Hunters, Spitfire, Mayhem, Eternal, Fuel, Valiant, Uprising, Outlaws, and Justice. For Grand Finals, yeah, I do think it very well. It's going to be XL versus Shock, but what I actually want to see is something weird like the Fusion versus Shanghai. I think that would be like some weird, interesting Grand Finals that would make it a lot more interesting than what we already think it's going to be.
All right, and flip-flopping back, going from bottom to top, I had Uprising, Spitfire, Outlaws, Eternal, Fuel, Mayhem, Valiant, Hunters, Charge, Justice, Defiant, Spark, Dynasty, Fusion, Reign, Dragons, Titans, Gladiators, Excelsior, and Shock. My personal Grand Finals pick is actually going to be the Dragons defeating the Shock in 2020. I think that the Dragons, they're the team with the most potential at this point. If they can really solidify that main tank role and come together, they're going to be pretty much unstoppable with everything else they have.
I like that.
Yeah.
So for mine, I have the Justice, the Mayhem, the Uprising, the Valiant, the Defiant, the Outlaws, the Spitfire, the Charge, the Eternal, the Hunters, the Spark, the Fuel, the Dynasty, the Gladiators, the Reign, the Dragons, the Titans, the Excelsior, and for number 1, it is the Shock. And for me, although I did say that the New York Excelsior was number 2 in power rankings, I do think it is going to be a rematch between the Shock and the Titans. You have to remember, these are power rankings. Anything can change, and I do think that it's going to be the Shock versus the Titans.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I just want to see something weird. I don't want to even. I mean, I have them top, but I'm like, I just want something weird in the finals for sure. Yeah, and I think that's gonna wrap us all up here. Yeah, if you want to sign out.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, DuckTV, Oregon DuckTV. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at DuckTV Esports. And we should have audio versions of all of these up very soon, unless you're actually listening, and this is the future, and you're listening to it already on Apple Music and Spotify.
Tell us who wins this year, please. I want to bet.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, so we'll be back next week with Go Goats, and we'll sign out. This is Nathan.
I'm Logan.
And my name's Eric.
And we're done.